and we'll get started. So, rule number one, if I can move this slide here, that's good. Okay, rule number one is all for one, one for all. Now, what do I mean by that? All for one, one for all. I'm talking about this business of fundraising is a we business, not a I business. It's a team sport, not an individual sport. And so when I talk about it, I'm talking about, it's not a one-man show. It's you share success with your staff and others. Avoid the I word. The staff is the foundation. I know that's really important. I know we did one campaign for a school in Texas where we created a captain's bell, I guess you call it, and so every time a development officer went out and came back in and secured a gift, they would ring the bell, and so everybody would come out of their office and they would all share in that success, and everybody felt good. So the point I'm trying to make is that everybody is involved in your success in fundraising, which means that the individual, the secretary, the board member, anyone who helps you set up that appointment, arranges the time for you to get in front of a prospective donor, anybody that's putting a proposal together, all of that is important. And so it's all for one, one for all. Share the success with everyone. It's not where you go out and secure a pledge and come back in and you're on, you're up there floating around on cloud nine. And you're all happy and you're successful, but without the support of these other individuals, then you probably wouldn't have been as successful. So all for one, one for all. Okay, rule number two. This is so important today. If you're there, be there. Don't be somewhere else. Don't be, don't be talking on your cell phone. I typically don't carry my cell phone with me because I think that, I've learned my lesson, and probably you have too. That you never know. You think it's off. You think your cell phone's off, and it's not off. And so I put my phone in my car when I go into a meeting. I don't even carry it in with me, and because I made the mistake one time of carrying my cell phone in to a meeting with about 150 people, and so I'm talking. Making a presentation and my phone rings, and so I'm looking around the room like, who can I blame this on? Who's got their phone on? And knowing that it was my phone going off, and I'm trying to turn my phone off while I'm looking around. So I don't do that anymore. I don't make that mistake anymore. So again, when you're out there on the job, stay focused, give your prospect your undivided attention. Don't be somewhere else mentally. Don't be thinking about what you're going to have for dinner tonight. Don't be thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow. Arrive on time. I always like to try to arrive at least, 5 minutes ahead of time before the appointment. I think you can arrive too early, but you certainly don't want to arrive too late. If you're going to be late, I think it's important that you call your prospect or the individual you're going to meet with and say, I'm running a little bit late, I'm in traffic, whatever it may be, so that you can alert that individual that you're going to be. They're busy too. So again, give them your undivided attention. Let me make another point to you. I was with a development officer several years ago, and so we go in to see this prospect. It was a doctor, and of course doctors don't give you a lot of time, but one of the things we did was we sat down in front of the doctor's, he was in his office, and we sat down in front of his desk, and the first thing the development officer did was move some of the doctor's papers and books over so he could put his stack of whatever he had he was bringing to the doc, put it right there on top of the desk. And so when we left the meeting, I told the development officer, I said, you made two mistakes in that meeting. He said, yeah, what were they? I said, number one, that desk is his territory. You don't put your information, you don't move anything on his desk. You put your information on the floor or on the carpet or on the whatever. And he said, well, what's number two? What was the second mistake I made? I said, chewing gum. You never go into a meeting chewing gum. That's rude. And I've seen other development officers do that, and So anyway, just pay attention to some of those things. Again, stay focused. And then the last thing I want to talk about is observe body language. This is really important. Observe body language. Now, what does this right here say to you? If you walk into a meeting and a prospect has got his arms folded and crossed, what does that say? Does that say, this is going to be a difficult meeting? This is going to be a little hard. This person is not interested in what I have to say. It's body language that you're looking at and you're observing, and I think you need to pay close attention to the body language. Now that doesn't mean 100% of the time that they're not open to what you're saying. It doesn't mean that they don't want to really talk to you, but it means that 90% of the time it does mean that this meeting may be a short meeting. So what does this tell you? Let me make this point. When I've gone into meetings and I have to sit behind, I walk into an office and I'm sitting behind a prospect's desk, then there's a barrier between me and the prospect. But if that prospect comes out from behind his desk and there's a couch area and he sits down in a couch and two of us are talking, communicating, and there's no barrier between the two of us, then to me it's a better meeting. Now, I don't walk into someone's office and say, can we sit over here in your couch or your chair area? I don't say that. The person that I'm meeting with certainly determines where we're going to sit in the meeting. I'm just saying it really is a better meeting if there's no barrier between you and the prospect. Now, okay, what happens when a person is doing this? He's got his fingers and he's evaluating you. He's evaluating what you're saying, and so he's paying close attention to what you're saying. Now, what does this mean? First of all, the person's leaning forward. He's got his hands on his face. Again, it shows an interest. It shows some interest there. Now, let me make a point here before we move off of observing body language. When the prospect you're sitting with changes positions in his or her chair, so that prospect leans forward, that's an indication to you the meeting's over. If the prospect is leaning forward and leans back, it's an indication the meeting is over. So you need to be closing down, you need to be picking up your information, whatever it may be, and leaving. That's a strong indication the meeting is over. When they move positions in their chair, whether they lean in forward or whether they lean in backwards. Okay? Now, here's rule number 3. Listen 80% of the time, talk 20% of the time. I had someone I worked with years ago, and it was just the opposite. He talked 20% of the time, he talked 80% of the time, listened 20%. You're going to hear a lot when you listen to someone, and some of us that are in this business are really great communicators, and we like to talk, and we don't like to listen. And I think that you have to you've got to try to pay attention when you're in a meeting, and you listen with your eyes, but you listen 80% of the time and talk 20% of the time. So, one of the things I said, I read this poem the other day, which said, an old owl lived in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. So why aren't we all like that? Why can't we all be like that old owl? Again, it's important that you listen, and you listen, and you listen, and you only talk 20% of the time. I'm telling you this, you will find out more information than you ever needed to know or wanted to know. So again, when you're in a meeting, observe and mentally record everything you see and hear. Mentally look at everything. Complete your contact report immediately after the meeting. Why is that important? Why is that important? Because if you go out on a meeting and you have a meeting on Tuesday and you come back in your office on Friday and you try to complete your contact report on Friday, you're not going to remember things. You're not going to remember, and it's really important that once that meeting's over, you get back in your car and you write your contact report, or you have a tape recorder and you record the information that came out of that meeting. So now, again, you know how to write a contact report. I'm not going to talk about a contact report here, but let me tell you a story. we did a campaign at South Dakota State years ago. And so I took the development officer from the School of Pharmacy with me, and we went to a meeting. We met with a retired pharmacist, probably 30, 40 miles from Brookings, South Dakota. And so I told him, I said, when we go in, I want to observe everything. I want to observe all of our surroundings and everything that's said in that meeting. When we come back out, we're going to write them down. So we walked in to his house, and first thing that I noticed, the TV was on Fox News. He goes over and turns the TV off. Then I looked at the table, coffee table, and I noticed he's reading Fortune magazine, Forbes, and Wall Street Journal. Again, he had a statue of Ronald Reagan up on his bookcase. Now, did I talk politics? Absolutely not. You don't get into politics in these meetings at all. Politics or religion. So I'm watching everything and listening to everything that he's saying and doing. So we were sitting at the meeting, and basically we were in there trying to talk him into making a gift, an outright gift to the School of Pharmacy. And so this wasn't necessarily going very well because he was not really receptive to that. And then I asked him, I said, and he was 72 years old. I said, I'll call him John. I said, John, have you ever thought about after your church and your children, have you ever thought about leaving, your estate or putting something in your estate for South Dakota State? And he said, well, no, I haven't. Now let me go back on that. I always, and this, people have some difficulty about estate gifts, but it's pretty simple. I always use those terms. After your church and your children, would you consider putting something in your estate for South Dakota State University? You can use the same, terminology with your school or your organization. But if you don't say that, I found out that they come back and they say, well, I'm going to leave so much of my church, and I've got to take care of my children. So I always cover that in my opening comments to them. So I noticed in the conversation, he said we knew he was interested in pharmacy, and I did, when we did our profile on this individual, he had 2 sons that were living in California. So anyway, he says to us, when I asked that question, he said, well, I've got some land. I've got 500 acres of land that I certainly could possibly leave to South Dakota State. And I said, what about your sons? I know your 2 sons live in California. Would they have an interest in the land, in getting the land? And he said, no, I've already had that conversation with them. See, if you don't ask those questions, then you're not going to find out everything that you need to know in terms of putting a proposal together or presenting him with an opportunity to give back. And that's one of the things that I think most development officers don't do. They do not ask enough questions. So don't sit there and listen, think you're listening to people and not understand what they're saying. So anyway, he says, yes, I think I can do that. Well, I got down here number 9, he likes red wine. The reason I said that was because there was a jug sitting on the floor, and it was filled half filled with red wine. So one of the things I said was he likes cheap red wine for sure. But one of the things we did when we left his house, we walked out and through the garage. There was a car sitting there in the garage. We got back in our car, and we sat down and we started writing down everything that we observed in that meeting. We came up with 22 things we'd observed. I said to the development officer, I said, we walked through the garage and there was a car sitting in that garage. What kind of car was that? He said, I don't know. I said, well, it was a Cadillac. I don't know what model Cadillac, but it was a Cadillac. I mean, you say to me, well, are all those points important? Well, they may be, but they may not be. But again, you don't go in there with a pencil and pad and start writing down everything you've seen. You mentally record all those things so that you then, when you get back, and that's what we did. We got back to the school and we started looking at those 22 things, and then we created our contact report. And it was really, it makes for a much better contact report when you've got all these points that you've observed. So again, keep that in mind. Now I'll tell you, to finish the story, we said to we fill out our contact report. We let the dean know. you know, what the information was that we gathered from this meeting. And then I told the development officer, I said, send this information, send this gentleman some butter pecan ice cream. And you may say, well, why that? Because when the development officer called him to set up the meeting, he said, what do you want us to bring to you from South Dakota State University today? And so South Dakota makes great ice cream. And so he said, bring me some butter pecan ice cream. We got there, and he had forgotten to bring the ice cream. So I said, go send him the ice cream today, and he did. Now, long story of this is the gentleman actually did donate the land. It was valued at about $750,000. So you never know unless you're asking those questions in that kind of a meeting. You make things happen then. All right, rule number 4, cross the T's and dot the I's. I think that this is a detailed business. Remember what I've said before. Maybe some of you heard me talk about this before, but I think that, you know, here are the things I look for in a development officer. Number 1, they got to believe in the mission of the organization they represent. Number 2, they got to have communication skills. Number 3, they have to be detailed. They have to cross the T's and dot the I's. Number 4, they have to have a strong work ethic. Now, again, I think crossing the T's and dotting the I's is probably as important any of those 4 things I just mentioned, maybe the most important, because I've said this, if you don't cross the T's and dot the I's, you probably won't stay in this business very long. So again, don't assume anything. Development is a detailed business. Detailed. Check and recheck everything. Follow up, follow through. Do what you say you're going to do sooner rather than later. Do what you say you're going to do sooner rather than later. If someone says to you, I need for you to, Jerry, I want you to follow up on this 1, 2, 3, and I know that's within my control, then I would say I'll do it. If I say, you know, if they ask me to do something that I have to go to someone else to get them to do it, then I'm going to say, I'm going to follow up with this, and I'll let you know when that happens. But I don't have any control over what someone else is going to do. But I have control over what I do. And if I tell someone I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it sooner rather than later. All right, rule number 5, eliminate the fear factor. So many people, and this is people, these are people, I've been in this business for over 30 years. I know this for a fact. There are people out there who are in the fundraising business who are afraid to ask for a gift. They won't ask for a gift. And so I would say you got to eliminate the fear factor. You've got to go out there and you got to talk to people and you've got to ask for the gift. Now, one of the things I would say to you is don't be afraid to make mistakes. I tell development officers this every day. We worked with a group recently where they hired 2 development officers, and I told them, okay, you got a week in the office. You can learn whatever you need to learn about the school, but in week number 2, you're going to be out there. You're going to be out there seeing people, talking to people, and whether you know anything or you don't know anything, you get out there. You know how you're going to find out whether you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to learn from those mistakes. I've seen development officers read all the books, go to all the seminars. You know, they spend 6 months in their office. They never out there talking to people. They're never knocking on doors, and they never accomplish anything. And so I'm saying to you, if you're new in this business, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I'm going to talk to you about how to make an ask. And you may not make it the way I make it, and you certainly won't make it the way I made it the first time I was out there. And I can remember the first presentation I made years ago. And I went into a company when I was at Auburn, went into a company and asked them for $250,000. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember how I said it. I was so nervous. I don't know what really happened. But, you know, in spite of that, we got the gift. We got the gift. Now, it wasn't because of me. It wasn't because of my communication skills or anything I said. So, you know, go out there. You're going to make things happen when you're out there asking people to consider making a gift. All right, rule number 6, understand the life cycle of a continuous donor. Life cycle of a continuous donor. That's what you want. Who are your best donors? People who have previously donors. I just met with development officers for the College of Education here at Auburn this morning. And so we talked about getting appointments. And they said, we have learned over and over again that we have a list of people that have never contributed to the College of Education and people who have contributed a little bit or given here or given there. those are our best prospects. Those are people that will meet with us. People who have never given will never meet with us. And so we've just eliminated those going in. I found that out when I was at Auburn years ago. I would look for people that made annual contributions. I didn't care how much they'd given. I don't care how many times they'd given. I looked for people who had given to the athletic fund. I didn't care how much they'd given or how often they'd given. But those I put in a list over here, and the list of people who had never given. And again, who do you think I got appointments with? I got appointments with people who had made some commitment, who had given at some point in time during their lifetime. So when you look at the life cycle of a continuous donor, what do we do first? We have a preliminary meeting, or sometimes we call it a discovery meeting, where we're going out trying to determine, the things that we need to determine, the TAPP, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. After the preliminary meeting, we're going to solicit. We're going to make a solicitation. We're going to ask people for a gift. Then we're going to follow up. Then we're going to get a commitment, and a commitment means you're getting something signed. You're going to get a signed pledge card. You're going to thank them. And again, we say you thank them 48 to 72 hours after the gift is made. And then we're going to do stewardship. And what does that mean? That means that we're going to steward that gift. We're going to thank them continuously over and over again. And we talk about touching people at least 5 times during the year. You can come up with what those 5 touches are. But we want to touch them 5 times during the year. So my point here is, if steps 5 and 6 don't happen, then 7 will never happen. In other words, if you don't do thank yous and you don't do stewardship, then 7 is not going to happen again. You're going to miss out on that solicitation. So you do stewardship, and then you're going to try to solicit them again. Okay. Rule number 7: trust in a relationship is key to securing private support. I think this is really important, that you build trust with individuals. How do you do that? First of all, you have to be yourself. You want to be willing to build a friendship with a prospect. I've built many friendships with people. Some of them have made gifts, others have not. So that, it's not where if I've built a relationship with an individual and they never give to the organization I represent, it doesn't mean that I see them in the store and I turn around and go the other way. They're still a friend. They're still a way that I want to continue that relationship. The point I'm trying to make is that people who don't give gifts to you, and you're trying to build relationships with those people so that they'll give again, then there's only 24 hours in a day. And so you can't spend a lot of time with people that are not giving back to your university. Again, the other points to remember is be genuine, be thoughtful, remember significant events in a prospect's life. I remember that when I was at Auburn, I had a prospect that we were working on, and he had given a small gift, had the capability of making a large gift, but he was a good friend. I've developed that friendship with him. And so his daughter was getting married, and so it was getting married in a small church. So I wasn't invited to the wedding, but I was invited to the reception. So I drove 2.5 hours to the reception, went through the receiving line, maybe spent 20 minutes, 30 minutes there at the reception, got in my car and drove back to Auburn. 5 hours I spent in the car. Now, after that, he told me, if he told me one time, he told me 3 times how much he appreciated my commitment of coming down for that reception and being there. That was really important to him. And so what it did was it built on the friendship that we had. And later on, he made a substantial leadership gift. And till he died a few years ago, until his death, he and I remained really close friends. He was a great individual. So again, remember significant events in a prospect's life. If you're going to send birthday cards out, send birthday cards out. Don't send them out 1 year and then don't send them out again, for 2 or 3 years. So if you do that, again, that's the point I want to make. If you're going to send a birthday card out, then make sure you send it out year in, year out. Every year you're going to do that. You're not doing it just sporadically. Okay, number 8. All meetings should have an objective. When I get in the car with a development officer, one of the first things I would say to that development officer as we're going to a meeting, what's our objective? What are we trying to accomplish here? Every meeting has to have an objective. That doesn't mean that that we meet our objective, but every meeting has to have an objective. So what I look for in a preliminary meeting or discovery meeting, I'm trying to look for 4 things. And I remember those 4 things by the word TAP, T-A-P-P. So what's the right time to make the solicitation? What's the right amount we're going to ask for? What's the right project? What's the right person to make that solicitation? So I'm looking for those 4 rights. Now, let me give you an example. I made work with a university where we did a feasibility study with this individual, and during the course of the feasibility study, he indicated that he would consider a gift of $500,000 to $1 million. So after we completed the feasibility study and we began the campaign, then we went back to him in a preliminary meeting and said to him, Julian, I know that in the course of the feasibility study that you indicated a leadership gift. Would you consider a 7-figure gift to the campaign? He immediately said, no, I will not. Then I said to him, I know your interest, your wife's interest, your interest is in music. Would the music building be the project that you would support, be willing to support if you gave to the campaign? He said, yes. I said, the president would like to come and meet with you. He would like to present this proposal to you. He's got Tuesday at 10 o'clock and Thursday at 3 o'clock. Which one of those times would work best for you next week? And he said, well, Thursday at 3 o'clock would be fine with me. And so here I walk out of the meeting and I have an indication of the right time, the right amount, the right project, and the right person. Now let me tell you, when I go back to the amount, I went back to the development staff and I said to him, he indicated that no, he would not consider a 7-figure gift. He was pretty emphatic. Matter of fact, he didn't hesitate when I asked for that. One of the things I like to do is I never like to ask for a 7-figure gift without asking the prospect in a preliminary meeting whether they would consider a 7-figure gift. I don't want to surprise or shock anyone. So what I told the development staff was, I said, here's what I would suggest we do. I think we go in and ask for $500,000, $500,000 outright, and $500,000 in his estate plans. And so we agreed on that. The president and I go back and we make the presentation at 3 o'clock the next Thursday. We go in, we talk about the project. I'll go through my 5 steps in a few minutes. But when I got to the ask amount, I said, we'd like for you to consider a gift of $1 million, $500,000 outright, and $500,000 in your estate plans. He immediately, I could see that he hadn't thought about that. And he said, after some hesitation, he said, that's a possibility. Let me think about that. Well, bottom line, 2 weeks later, that's what he committed to. So you see, you've got to think about this. You got to think about these things, and you got to be creative when you're out there talking to people. So again, remember the 4 rights. Will you get those every time? No. Will you get some of them? Yes, you'll get some of them. But you've got to be able to, when you're talking about the projects and you're trying to determine the right project, you've got to say to a person, here are 5 projects that we are that's going to support the campaign. And you go over those projects, and the prospect sits there with his arms crossed, or the body language we talked about, and so he doesn't give you an indication. You have to ask the question: which one of those 4 projects or 5 projects do you feel that you would have more of an interest in supporting? That's a question. Okay, so the right person. Would you? We'd like to bring the president back to visit with you. Is that okay? You could ask those kind of questions. One of the things that I do on the right amount, I always talk about the gifts that we received so far in the campaign. We've had, 6 gifts at $250,000. I never mentioned names, but I mentioned dollar amounts. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to look at body language again. I'm trying to discover, why does this person, what's his reaction to me saying those things? Some people don't say, well, I couldn't do anything like that. Or they sit there and, they don't give you any indication. So again, you can come up with that, but I'm going to tell you right now, getting the right amount is more important today than ever before. I used to think that you could, if a person was capable, you could ask them for the moon. You can't do that anymore, because let me tell you what happens. When you ask for the wrong amount of money, or you ask for too much money, they don't give you half of that. They don't give you a third of it. They give you nothing. And so you have to be very careful. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, rule number 9, know your role in the solicitation. Know your role in the solicitation. I like to go in groups of 2. Now, years ago when I was at Auburn, I went out on a lot of solicitations by myself, and I'm sure you as development officers have done the same thing. But here's my 5 steps that some of you have certainly seen before. We created this probably 20 years ago, and it's worked extremely well. It says, you know, that the right hand knows what the left hand's doing. So when we go in, and let's say I'm going out with the president on a solicitation, what is step number 1? Small talk. Is that important? Very important. Why? Because it's an icebreaker. It's a way to get people talking. You don't go in and say, well, let me tell you why I'm here. You sit down, you talk about the weather, you talk about sports, you talk about you know, their occupation, anything, and that certainly takes, you know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most, but it's a good way to have an icebreaker. Step number 2 is my role. Now, I used to let the president take step number 2, and or the development officer take step number 2. What I found is that step number 1 went on forever and ever and ever and ever. And so I started taking step number 2, so that I knew when there was a break in the conversation, I would say to the prospect, John, let me tell you why we're here. We're here to talk about the campaign at XYZ University or XYZ organization, and here's one of the things I say in step number 2, and this is a really important step. I'll say, I have a proposal, and I want to leave it with you. I want you to read it, review it, and consider it. I have a proposal I want to leave with you. I want you to read it, review it, and consider it. What did I just say to that prospect? I said to that prospect indirectly, we're not expecting a decision today. That takes pressure off of the prospect. Takes pressure off of it. That's why the 5 steps were built. The 5 steps were built to take pressure off of people, not put pressure on them. You don't put pressure on people to get gifts. When you put pressure on people to get a gift or sign a pledge card, you know what happens? Your default rate goes sky high. So you don't do that. So step number 3 is telling the story. That's the president's role. Did we script him? Did we script the board chairman or anyone that goes with you? No. We might give him some bullet points. We might give him some bullet points and say, here are the bullet points we think you ought to cover, and tell them the story. But you talk from your heart, and you talk with 2 things, passion and enthusiasm. Passion and enthusiasm. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So that takes 10 minutes maybe. We also like to have boards, visual boards that the president or the board chairman or someone can show. Here's a picture of our building, here's the floor plan, whatever. It helps to have that. Step number 4 is the ask. Here again, if I'm with you, that's my role. And I go back and talk about, I don't just jump into the ask. I go back and I talk about where we are in the campaign. Here's what's happened in the campaign. We started the campaign 6 months ago. The board and the faculty and staff are all 100%. You know, we are challenging everyone to do all they can do. Anything you do is certainly going to be appreciated. We would like for you and your family to consider a gift of $50,000, payable in equal amounts of $10,000 per year over the next 5 years in support of the campaign. Now, I stop right there. Most development officers don't stop. They keep going. I stop and wait for an answer. You have to wait for an answer. What answer do you think I'm going to get? I've been doing thousands of these. What answer do I get? We'll think about it. We'll consider it. We'll pray about it. I mean, all of those are responses you get. You know, they don't say no. I bet I had 10 no's in all the solicitations I've made. And so, but the point I'm making is you have to stop right there and wait for an answer. Most development officers will say, John, we'd like to consider a gift of $50,000, payable equal amounts of $10,000 per year over the next 5 years in support of the campaign. But if you can't do that, maybe do 25. If you can't do 25, maybe you can do 15, or whatever you want to do. Certainly, they'll be appreciated. That is not what we want in number 4 in the ask. We want to make a statement, and we want to wait for a response. Now, we wait until that person speaks first. We do not speak. We wait till that person speaks first. Sometimes that's difficult. But you know, just look around the room, look around, look at your shoes, look somewhere. Doesn't matter. But just wait. Just wait for an answer, and then they'll tell you something. They'll throw up their hands, they'll laugh, they'll do something. And when they do, when they make any sound, then I would say, John, remember this: any amount you give is certainly going to be appreciated. Any amount you give is going to be appreciated. That again is a way to take pressure off of them. Step number 5, I would say, John, you know, can we follow up with you on this presentation in 5 to 10 days? What do you think their answer is? The answer is 99.9% of the time, yes, yes. Okay. Now, rule number 10, fundraising is a numbers game. It is a numbers game, you know, so the more people you're out there seeing, you know, the more chances you have of succeeding. That's why we established a rule of 23, 20-3. That means 20 face-to-face contacts per month and 3 solicitations per month. You know, you say, well, that's not hard, or that is hard. Whatever perception you have about that, the point I'm trying to make to you is fundraising is a numbers game. I remember talking to people about, you know, if you want to raise $1 million, then you got to go out and present $2 million in proposal presentations. So if you want to raise $4 million, you got to go out and present $8 million in proposal presentations. All right, you know, here's one of the things we do. We look at a lot of different charts. One thing we do is we call it a gifts table with prospect names. That's a populated gifts table. Populated gifts table. So if you're trying to raise $1 million, you know, and you need what? One gift. You need a 20% lead gift. So you need one gift at $200,000. You come over here to the right-hand column, and you have 3 names, because we need 3 prospects for every 1 gift we're looking for. So we actually write those 3 names in. Then we say, okay, in $1 million gifts table, we need 1 gift at $200,000. We need 2 gifts at $100,000. So how many prospects we need now? We need 6. Go over here, I have 6 lines. Again, we're looking to populate the gifts table. And again, those help you with trying to go out and know who to see and when to see, and the fact that, you know, a lot of your success is going to come from those leadership gifts. Now, we've got the comprehensive gifts table, solicitation challenge report, solicitation report, weekly activity report. All those reports are involved. But let me just show you one. We call it a comprehensive gift table. Working goal of $5 million. Now, one of the points I want to point out to you is, here's your gift table over here. You know, you need 1 gift. Remember what I said? 20% lead gift. So you need 1 gift at $1 million. You need 3 over here in column 4. You need 3 prospects. And so we've identified 10 prospects, and we've identified the gift amount based on what? Based on peer reviews, electronic screening, whatever. So we have those numbers over there. Now, one of the things I look at when I look at this chart, I look at the column, the totals of column 6. So here we've got prospects identified at $37 million. So and our goal is, our working goal is $5 million. I like that number down here on at the bottom of column 6, 37 million. I like that number to be 2 to 3 times what our working goal is. So in this case, it's much more than that. So I would say this particular gifts table, this comprehensive gifts table, is in good shape. But look over here in column 7. Here's the proposal we presented. Here's the amount we presented. Here's the number of donors that we've succeeded, and here's where we are with the gifts we've received. So it's really a comprehensive gifts table. I really like this a lot. And when we're in campaigns, we use this gifts table to measure our success and where we are and what we're working. But again, I can't, if number 6 is not 2 to 3 times what the working goal is, then you're in trouble. Okay, rule number 11. Men and women are alike in their giving. No, they are not alike in their giving. I hate to tell you that. Women want a relationship, not just recognition. It takes time for a woman to really want to give to your organization. You have to build that relationship. You have to show them, you know, you're important. They are look at more than men do. They look at the efficiency of the organization. You know, how efficient are you? How much money are you spending to raise money? They're motivated by something highly personal. You know, something that's personal to them. They want and need involvement before giving at any significant level. And I can tell you this, they expect and will not donate again if you don't have stewardship. If you're not stewarding their gift, they won't give it to you again. Now, you know, women control about 60% of the wealth in this country, so it's really important that you build that relationship with some of the women that are out there with your in your constituency base. It's really important. One of the points too I want to make is that we know this statistically, that 92% of decisions that are made when you make a presentation, 92% is made by the woman in the family. They decide where it's going and how much that your organization gets. So if you're out there making a presentation or a solicitation, then my suggestion would be never make a solicitation without having the husband and wife there. You need both of them there when you're making that presentation. Okay. Rule number 12, time is not your gift. Time is not your gift. You know, you may think that time is your gift. I remember a story where an individual said a volunteer was out trying to solicit a friend of his, and he said to the friend, you know, I'd like for you to give X number of dollars, or consider X number of dollars, and his friend said, well, how much have you given? And the gentleman said, well, I haven't get anything. I'm volunteering my time. He said, well, look, put me down for 2 hours on Saturday. So again, it's not about your time is not your gift. You have to give. So you know, when we talk about this, we talk about the board, the staff, the volunteers should be the first to give. It sends a very strong message. It sends a strong message to people that you are that you're not asking them to do something that the board and the staff hadn't already done. I've told a story before. I remember making a solicitation at a small Christian school, and in East Tennessee. We went in to see this gentleman. We asked him for $1 million, and the first thing he said to me, Jerry, what's the board and what's the faculty and staff done? And I said, in both cases, they were 100%. So again, he didn't give $1 million, but he gave $600,000. That's important, you know, that you got to have 100% participation from those groups, and that's really important to your success. And this encourages others to give. Again, keep that in mind as you move forward, and you try to encourage your board. And speaking of boards, I like to have board members that have affluence and influence. Affluence and influence. If they don't have either one of those, they probably shouldn't be on your board. So again, I think it's important that everyone give, even including you. You cannot go out as a development officer and ask someone to give if you haven't given yourself. I'm not saying to you how much you give. That's a personal decision that you and your spouse, if you're married, you have to decide that. It doesn't matter what you give. And you don't go out and wear it on your sleeve. You don't say, I've given, why don't you give? It's important that you have given, because you come into a meeting with that sense of confidence that you wouldn't have if you hadn't given yourself. Okay, rule number 3, stewardship is not an option. We've talked about that before. You know, it used to be an option. People didn't do stewardship. They didn't do stewardship. But it's gotten very, very competitive out there. There are 1.1 million nonprofit organizations, and they're growing by 30 to 40,000 per year. Everybody's looking for that terrible dollar. I can tell you this, if you don't do stewardship with the gifts that you receive, then you're probably not going to get that gift again. So it's important. Now, what are those 5 steps, or what are those 5 touches? We mentioned it earlier. I mean, you deliver a poinsettia at Christmas time, you know, birthday card, invitation to an event, whatever it may be. But let me tell you, it's not just saying, okay, we're going to touch our prospects 5 times. There's got to be a structure and organization to stewardship to make it effective. If there's no structure and no organization, then stewardship is not going to be effective. If you say, I'm going to touch my prospects 5 times, well, what are you going to do in October? What are you going to do in November? What are you going to do in January? What are you going to do in March? I mean, what time of the year and when are you going to do these things? It's important that you're structured and organized and detailed. Go back to that detail point I made earlier. Okay, so here we are. You know, deliver Christmas poinsettias, send Thanksgiving cards. I started doing that in telling clients to send Thanksgiving cards, not Christmas cards. Everybody gets hundreds of Christmas cards, and they get lost in the stack. Very few people send Thanksgiving cards. But I can tell you this, based on my talking about Thanksgiving cards, you'd be surprised how many Thanksgiving cards I get now every Thanksgiving. So call our donor to say thank you. Have what you call thankathons. Have thankathons. Go in there one day and say, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours calling all of my donors that have made a gift to me in the past year. I'm going to call them and say thank you. Now, are you going to get them all on the phone? No. Are you going to get their voice message? Yes. Even that is important. Even that is important. We say board members ought to be doing that too. They ought to be calling people and thanking them, even if they can't talk to them. So invite them to a class to speak. Anything that you can keep those people involved, because it's too competitive. If you don't, you'll lose them to another organization. Okay, so I guess I've gotten down to the end here. Any questions that you might have? Let's just look here and see. Again, knowing what the basic rules are really important in terms of understanding this business. And again, let me just sort of review with you real quickly, and that is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. This is a detailed business. Cross the T's and dot the I's. You've got to have, it's a numbers game. You've got to be out there seeing people. When you don't know a lot, about this business, numbers become even more important to you. So that you may have to go see 3 times the number of people that others might see 2 times and get their gifts. But let me tell you this: this business is a journey, not a destination. You're going to learn as you go along, and you're going to get better tomorrow and today than you were yesterday. That's why I say development officers are more valuable to the institution or the organization they work for today than they were yesterday. Because why? You're building relationships with people. You continue those relationships building, and that's important as you move forward. Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, I will appreciate all of you being on the webinar, and look forward to seeing you down the road somewhere. And we will do another webinar in the next month to 6 weeks, and I think it's going to be on the basic principles of fundraising. So anyway, thank you again for taking your time to be here and listen. If you'd like a copy of that book, you certainly can send a note to Susan Crow, and she'll send you a copy. So thank you. Have a great day. Have a great week, and make something positive happen for your organization. So, and to make it happen, get out there and see somebody. Thank you very much.